The great chamber of the Galactic Council hung in the vacuum of space like a jewel suspended in darkness. 17 species sat in a circle, their forms ranging from crystalline beings that sang through light waves to massive creatures that spoke in subsonic rumbles. They had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, and their authority had never been questioned. Today was no different. They would make decisions. Others would obey. Ambassador Zoran of the Quadrillion Empire adjusted his posture on the golden platform. His scaled skin reflected the light of the central star projection. Around him, the representatives of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy waited for the Economic Committee to finish their report. Trade agreements, territory disputes, the slow, endless management of a peaceful galaxy where might had already been established and accepted. The Quadrillion voice came sharp and clear. The Economic Committee reports that Sector 7 Alpha contains several developing worlds with significant mineral wealth. One is called Earth. The data shows the species there has not yet achieved interstellar capability. They possess no defense fleet. Their weapons technology is primitive. A few representatives glanced at the projection, showing a blue and green world. They looked away just as quickly. Everyone already knew how this would end. Proceed with the resource extraction, Zoran said. The vote was unanimous. No discussion was necessary. A species without space travel could not resist. That was simply how the galaxy worked. Within hours, a probe descended through Earth's atmosphere. It was small and visible to human radar systems that were still looking outward for threats they did not expect to find so soon. The probe began its survey of mineral deposits. It gathered data on population centers. It measured defenses. It found exactly what the Council had predicted. Nothing to worry about. But on a military base hidden in the mountains of Colorado, alarms suddenly rang out. Commander Alice Wells stood in the tactical center, her dark eyes fixed on the radar screen. Something was moving in the upper atmosphere. Something that should not be there. The signal was unlike anything in the human databases. Not a satellite. Not a meteor. Something else, Dodd. She did not hesitate. Years of training made her movements swift and precise. I need to speak with the president. Now. Go Black. This is not a drill. The call went through secure channels. President Mark Harrison was pulled from a meeting with foreign dignitaries. Within 30 minutes, he sat in the Emergency Operations Center with his military advisors and scientific experts. The radar image was displayed on the screen for everyone to see. That is something, said Dr. Paul Foster, the chief of aerospace research. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. That is something not made on Earth. The room fell silent. For all of human history, the species had wondered if they were alone. Now they knew. The answer had arrived, and it was watching them from above. Alice Wells spoke clearly. Sir, we have been monitoring unusual signatures for the last 5 years. We believed them to be natural phenomena. Now I think they were probes. I think we are being studied. President Harrison looked at each face in the room. These were the smartest people on the planet. Yet none of them looked ready for this moment. He understood. You could plan for something your entire life, but when it arrived, it was different. We respond, he said. And we respond now. Alice, can you make contact? Yes, sir. We have prepared for this scenario. We have a communication protocol ready. Use it. The commander moved to her communication station. Humans had developed advanced signal technology in secret for decades. Not because they knew an alien probe would come, but because the military always planned for the unknown. They had built communication systems that could reach beyond the atmosphere. They had launched satellites that could detect tiny movements in space. The world had no idea. The world believed humanity was not ready for the stars. The world was wrong. A message was encoded and sent upward. It was simple and direct, broadcast in multiple frequencies. The message announced that Earth was aware of the probe's presence. It warned that any attempt to extract resources without permission would be viewed as an act of aggression. The message included technical data that would prove humans had far more capability than the probe's initial survey had suggested. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the probe's behavior changed. It moved in different patterns. It was analyzing the signal. It was comparing the data it had collected with the aggressive technological display it had just witnessed dot in the president's office. Mark Harrison sat behind his desk and thought about what came next. He had been elected to lead a nation. Now he might need to lead a species. The weight of that responsibility pressed against him like gravity. On a space station orbiting Earth, the probe collected all its data and prepared to transmit everything back to the Galactic Council. The message was clear. The humans had lied. They were not primitive. They were not defenseless. They had technology, and they had will. The Galactic Council would receive this report within days. They would have to revise their assessment. They would have to decide what to do about a species that refused to accept subjugation. A species that stood up and said no dot in the tactical center. Alice Wells watched the probe's movements on the screen. It was leaving, heading back into space. It was carrying a message that would change everything. President Harrison stood at the window of his office and looked at the sky. Somewhere up there, someone had just learned that Earth was not a silent world waiting to be conquered. Earth had a voice, and it had just used that voice to announce that its people would not be treated as prey. The quiet before the storm had ended. The galaxy had made its first mistake. Now it would learn what that mistake had cost. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos when the probe's report was transmitted. The data was impossible. A developing species with no space fleet should not possess advanced communication technology. Yet the evidence was clear. The humans had detected the probe. They had sent a warning. Worse, they had shown they could do both. Ambassador Zorn stood from his platform, his voice cutting through the confusion like a blade. This is deception. The humans are bluffing. They sent us a false signal to frighten us. They captured our probe and broadcast a fake transmission to make themselves seem stronger than they are. Other council members wanted to believe this explanation. It made sense. It allowed them to maintain their view of the galaxy, where they held absolute power. A species could not suddenly possess technology it did not have. That was not how things worked, but the Valortian known as Keeper of Archives studied the data more carefully. His multiple eyes processed the information from different angles. What he saw troubled him deeply. The humans had not captured the probe. The signal had been sent from ground installations spread across their planet. Multiple sources. Multiple frequencies. The technology was real. This is advanced, Keeper of Archives said. This is not bluffing. This is a species that has been developing in secret. Then they are dangerous, Zorn said immediately. All the more reason to act. If they have hidden their capabilities, they intend to use them against us. We cannot allow a threat to grow unchecked in our galaxy. I propose immediate military action. We send a strike fleet. We neutralize their installations. We secure the resources we came for. And we ensure they never become a problem. The vote was not unanimous this time, but it passed. Fear is a powerful force, even in the minds of those who have never faced a real threat. The Council was accustomed to absolute authority. The idea that a species might resist, that they might have hidden strength, that they might refuse to obey, triggered something primal. 7 battle cruisers were mobilized. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a planet if necessary. They entered a warp passage and disappeared into the void. heading toward Earth at speeds that would bring them to the system in a matter of days. On Earth, President Harrison received a warning from the detection systems. An armada was coming. It was massive. It was moving fast. And there was no room for negotiation. How long? He asked Alice Wells. 72 hours, she said. Give or take a few minutes. The president nodded slowly. He had known this might happen. Military strategists had always warned that peaceful contact might not occur. Some species, when faced with an unknown power, chose to eliminate the threat immediately. Activate all defense systems. Full alert. Tell the military to assume combat status. And tell the world. That night, President Harrison sat in the Oval Office and prepared to address the planet. He had spent his entire life avoiding this moment, and now it was impossible to avoid any longer. His words were, broadcast everywhere simultaneously. Television, radio, internet, cell phones. Every human being on Earth heard what he had to say. People of the world, an alien force is approaching our planet. They come with hostile intent. We will defend ourselves and our home. We have worked in secret for decades to prepare for this possibility. We have developed weapons. We have built defenses. We are ready. We will not surrender. We will not bow. And we will not accept the idea that some distant council has the right to steal what is ours. Stand together. Stand strong. Stand human. The world reacted with fear and determination in equal measure. But mostly, it reacted with anger. Humanity had survived ice ages and plagues. It had crossed oceans and climbed mountains. It had split the atom and touched the moon. The idea that some alien council thought it could walk into their home and take what it wanted seemed like an insult too great to bear. Engineer Sarah Mitchell stood in the Central Command facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. Her team of technicians surrounded her, ready to activate systems that had been built in bunkers and hidden bunkers, in mountain installations and underwater facilities spread across the globe. Begin activation sequence, Sarah said. Her voice was calm, but her heart hammered in her chest. Around the world, satellites came online. Energy weapons that had been designed over 3 decades took their place in orbit. Air defense systems activated. Ground-to-space cannons prepared for firing. The global grid came alive with power and purpose. When the Quadrillion Armada arrived, they expected to encounter nothing but empty space and primitive weapons. What they found instead was a coordinate system where every square kilometer had been turned into a killing field. The first wave of fighter craft descended toward Earth's surface. They were advanced, fast, and heavily armed. Nothing a primitive species possessed should have been able to touch them, but Alice Wells had prepared her pilots well. And humanity had one advantage that the Council had never considered. Humans would fight even when the odds were impossible. They would die rather than surrender. And they would keep fighting even when they should have already lost. The first alien fighter exploded in a ball of flame over the Atlantic Ocean. Then another. And another. The battle had begun, and Earth was not going quietly. The Galactic Council, watching from their distant chamber, could not believe what they were seeing. Their ships were being damaged. Their fighters were being shot down. A species with no space fleet was knocking them out of the sky. Zoran stood in fury. Increase the assault. Overwhelm their defenses. This ends now. But even he could see something was changing. The arrogance that had protected the Council for 3,000 years was cracking. And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when you pushed a species into a corner with nothing left to lose. The second wave of the Quadrillion assault crashed against Earth's defenses like a storm against a mountain. More ships, more weapons, more determination. The Council had decided that raw power would solve this problem. They had not counted on what raw defiance looked like when it came from a species that had survived on a death world. Captain James Lincoln commanded the Global Defense Network from a facility buried 3 miles beneath the Canadian Arctic. His hands moved across holographic displays, directing human resources with the precision of a conductor leading an orchestra. He saw patterns in the alien assault that others might have missed. The Quadrillions were aggressive but predictable. They relied on superior technology and firepower. They did not expect innovation from prey. Redirect satellites 3 and 4 to intercept the cruiser on the eastern approach, James commanded. Fighter Squadron 7, break formation and scatter. Make them come at you individually. Don't give them the target they expect. His pilots understood immediately. They had trained for years under commanders who believed humanity could win against odds that should have been impossible. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were warriors from a world that killed you if you were not strong enough. Fighter pilot Kyle Patterson screamed through the upper atmosphere in his combat jet. The inertial dampeners pushed his body back against the seat with crushing force as he pulled into a maneuver that no alien pilot expected. The Quadrillion fighter that was chasing him overextended, and Kyle used that moment to light up the engines and close the distance. "I have a lock," he said quietly into his radio. He fired. The missile streaked across the black void and hit its target. The alien ship became a fireball that painted the night sky in orange and red. "One more," Kyle said. "I'm going back in." He was not alone. Across the planet, hundreds of human fighters were doing the same thing. They were outgunned. They were outnumbered. And they did not care. They fought as if the universe depended on them staying alive. Because for them, it did. Dr. Amanda Foster led the scientific response team from a laboratory complex hidden beneath the Australian outback. Her job was different from the soldiers. She had to figure out how the alien technology worked and find its weaknesses. She did this by studying every scrap of evidence from destroyed ships and analyzing the patterns of attack. They have a targeting system that relies on optical scanning combined with energy signatures, she explained to her team. If we mask our thermal output and create false optical targets, we can make their systems unreliable. Within hours, new protocols were transmitted to every combat unit. Fighters began painting false heat signatures on their surfaces. Decoys were deployed that mimicked the energy signatures of military installations. The Quadrillion weapons suddenly became less accurate. Their technological advantage shrank with every new tactic humanity introduced. In orbit, a battle raged that would decide the fate of 2 civilizations. Human capital ships, smaller and less powerful than the Quadrillion cruisers, moved with an agility that the alien vessels could not match. The human commanders used psychology as much as firepower. They fainted. They retreated when the Quadrillions expected them to fight. They attacked from angles that left the alien fleet confused and scattered. The Quadrillion commander, General Voss, watched from his battlecruiser as 3 of his finest warships fell to human fire. It was impossible. His ships were more advanced. His weapons were more powerful. His forces should have crushed this resistance like an insect beneath a boot. Yet here he was, losing ground to a species that only days ago had not even known he existed. Voss made a decision that would echo through galactic history. He requested an audience with the Galactic Council. When the connection was established, his voice carried the weight of bitter defeat. "We are losing," he said. "The humans do not fight like a civilized species. They do not value individual lives over victory. They will sacrifice everything to keep us from taking their world. They adapt faster than we do. They innovate faster. And they do not know when to surrender." Zoran's response came immediately. "Then you will press the assault until they have no choice but to surrender." But Voss was learning what the Council had forgotten. Some things cannot be conquered through force alone. Some species will choose death before slavery. And Earth was inhabited by one of those species. Back on the surface, Sarah Mitchell received reports that shocked her team. The alien forces were pushing harder. The casualty rates were climbing. Entire cities were under bombardment. Millions of humans had died or were being evacuated from combat zones. Yet the defenses held. And for every human killed, 2 alien fighters fell from the sky. For every military facility destroyed, human engineers found ways to rebuild it or reroute its functions. The species from a world that knew only harsh survival was using that heritage to fight a war they could not lose. President Harrison made another broadcast. His voice was steady, but it carried the weight of command in a time of war. We have lost many people. We will lose more. This is the cost of freedom. This is the price we pay for refusing to let anyone tell us that we are less than we are. Keep fighting. Keep building. Keep believing. We are human. We are from Earth, and we do not surrender. By the time the 3rd week of combat arrived, the Catrilian assault was visibly breaking. They had lost 5 cruisers and over 200 fighter craft. The humans had lost thousands of soldiers and weapons platforms, but their determination had not wavered. The Galactic Council faced a choice that seemed impossible. They could increase the assault and risk the complete annihilation of their armada. Or they could admit that they had made a mistake. Neither option was acceptable to beings who had never been wrong before. Envoy Victoria Ramirez stood in a detention facility hidden beneath the Nevada desert. Before her sat an alien prisoner. The quadrillion was wounded but still dangerous. Its scaled skin was marked with burns from weapons fire. Its eyes glowed with a mixture of pain and defiance. Victoria had studied alien physiology and psychology for years. She understood that every species viewed the universe differently. The quadrillion saw the galaxy as a place where power determined everything. The strong took what they wanted. The weak accepted what they were given. It was not cruelty. It was simply how things worked. Why do your people keep fighting? Victoria asked. Her words were translated by a device that turned human speech into the quadrillion language. You cannot win. Your armada is destroyed. Your reinforcements cannot arrive in time. Surrender now, and you will be allowed to live. The quadrillion's response came in a series of low rumbles and hisses. When translated, it meant something like, "You do not understand. The council will not stop. They cannot stop. You have insulted their authority. They will come again and again until you are destroyed." That is the way of things. Victoria leaned forward. Why? Why can't they accept that we can defend ourselves? The alien's eyes focused on her with sudden intensity. Because you are from a death world. Everyone knows that species from death world are unpredictable, dangerous, willing to die for nothing. The council feared this. That is why they wanted to eliminate you before you became a threat. They were right to be afraid. You have proven this. Victoria felt something shift inside her mind. She had thought of Earth as a peaceful world. A world that had managed to create civilization and beauty despite harsh conditions. But to this alien and to the rest of the galaxy, Earth was something else entirely. Earth was a world that killed. A world that demanded strength. A world where species evolved to survive at any cost, and humans were the product of that world. She reported this conversation to President Harrison. The meaning of the exchange was clear. To the galactic powers, humans were not civilized. They were not reasonable. They were weapons that had gained consciousness and refused to be used. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. The numbers were undeniable. The quadrillion armada was crippled. Military solutions were no longer viable. The humans could not be destroyed without committing forces that would leave the rest of the galaxy vulnerable. Keeper of Archives made a proposal that shocked many council members. We must negotiate. The humans have proven themselves capable of defending their world. We cannot defeat them through force, but perhaps we can prevent further conflict through dialogue. Zoran stood in fury. You would surrender? You would treat these Deathworlders as equals? They are not ready for galactic society. They are violent, primitive, and irrational. They are also, the Keeper replied carefully, no longer subjects we can ignore. Look at what they have accomplished in weeks of combat. They have destroyed our fleet. They have adapted to our weapons. They have done this despite being isolated, despite lacking the accumulated knowledge of galactic civilization. Imagine what they might do if given time to grow. If we do not negotiate now, we will face them again. And next time, we will be even less prepared. The debate raged through the session. Some council members agreed with Zorn. Others saw the wisdom in the Keeper's words. But the mathematics were simple. Earth could not be conquered without casualties that the Council found unacceptable. President Harrison received a message from the Galactic Council. It was simple and direct. A ceasefire. An offer to meet and discuss terms. The war, such as it was, had reached a stalemate. Neither side could force victory. So they would try something else. On the night before the summit, Alice Wells stood on the balcony of the United Nations building in New York. The city was damaged from orbital bombardment. Entire sections were blackened ruins. People were still clearing rubble and searching for survivors. And yet, the city was being rebuilt. Humans were already putting it back together. She thought about what they had achieved. Against odds that made victory seem impossible, they had fought. Not because they thought they would win, but because surrender was not an option they could accept. The next morning, Victoria Ramirez led a diplomatic team into space. They traveled to a neutral station orbiting between Earth and the Ketrulian territories. The Galactic Council representatives were already there, waiting to meet the species that had become the most important players in galactic politics overnight. The Peace Summit took place in a chamber that had been designed to accommodate different species and different atmospheres. Humans stood in an oxygen-rich environment. Ketrulians occupied a section with different gravity and temperature. Representatives from other species sat in various zones designed for their specific needs. President Harrison entered the chamber with Victoria at his side. Alice Wells followed, still in uniform, a reminder that Earth had fought for its place at this table. Keeper of Archives spoke first. His voice carried authority that transcended species differences. The Galactic Council recognizes that our initial assessment of Earth was in error. You are not a developing world that required guidance. You are a species that will determine its own future. We propose that you be granted full membership in the Council. Zoran did not hide his disagreement. His scaled face turned a darker shade, and his voice came harsh and angry. This is a mistake. This species is dangerous. They will destabilize the peace we have maintained for 3,000 years. Victoria stepped forward. The humans have shown remarkable restraint. Despite our ability to continue the war and inflict greater damage on the Ketrulian territories, we chose to accept this ceasefire. We could have fought to the last person. Instead, we accepted dialogue. That is not the action of a species that wants chaos. That is the action of a species that understands the difference between self-defense and conquest. She placed a data file on the central display. These are the casualty figures from our conflict. Millions of humans have died. Trillions of dollars of infrastructure has been destroyed. And yet we came here willing to forgive, willing to accept peace, willing to become part of this council. That is not arrogance. That is wisdom. The debate continued for hours. Some council members remained suspicious of humans. Others, particularly Keeper of Archives, advocated strongly for Earth's membership. But the deciding factor was not argument or debate. It was simple reality. The humans had proven themselves. They had earned their place through blood and determination. The vote was taken. 16 council members voted in favor. Only Zorn abstained. Earth was now a member of the Galactic Council. President Harrison stood and addressed the assembly. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of a species that had survived impossible odds. We have learned something important these past weeks. The greatest strength does not come from technology or power. It comes from the will to survive. Humans are from a world that teaches us that life is precious, that people matter, that we must protect those who cannot protect themselves. The Quadrillions attacked us because they thought we were weak. But they underestimated what desperation can create. They underestimated a species willing to die rather than see their world conquered. He paused and looked directly at Keeper of Archives. I want to propose something. That the Council establish a new principle. That no species will attempt to conquer another without consent. That strength will be measured not just by weapons, but by the capacity for mercy. That we build a galaxy where peace comes from mutual respect, not from the fear of superior firepower. Keeper of Archives stood and placed his appendage on a symbol of agreement. One by one, other council members did the same. Even Zorn eventually acknowledged the new principle, though his support seemed forced. The summit ended. Humans and aliens, so recently enemies, began the slow process of learning how to coexist. Trade agreements were negotiated. Technology was shared. The Quadrillions even provided assistance with rebuilding the damaged cities on Earth. It was not forgiveness, but it was acceptance. Alice Wells stood in the observation deck of the space station and looked toward Earth. The blue and green world hung in the darkness, beautiful and alive. Humans were already beginning to reach outward. Within a generation, there would be human colonies on other worlds. Human ships would travel between the stars. Human scientists would make discoveries that would advance galactic knowledge. The quiet world had become impossible to ignore, and the galaxy would never be the same. On Earth, President Harrison stood at the same spot where he had been standing when the first message arrived from space. The night sky above him was clear and bright. Somewhere up there, humans were being trained to fly ships designed by alien engineers. Somewhere up there, ambassadors from a dozen species were learning about human culture. And somewhere up there, a new era of galactic history was beginning. A young girl looked up at the stars and asked her mother a question. Can we go there? Can humans live among the stars? Her mother smiled. Yes, we can. We already are. The death world had survived. And in surviving, it had changed everything.